Hello, hello. My name is Jeremy Reeves, and I want to welcome you to the Scalable Growth Podcast, where I'm going to help physical product brands scale faster with more profit, more cash, and less stress. And if you currently run a physical products brand, those are probably all the things that you want, right? And how do I know this? Well, I have also run a physical products brand. I've been doing this the vast majority of my life, whether it was either my business or helping clients in physical products businesses. And I understand all of the specific challenges and the little nuances that go into these types of businesses that aren't really factors in many other businesses. There's sort of a unique set of challenges that people in this space face. And I built this podcast to help you get through all of them. Whether you're just starting out and you're under $1 million, you're still trying to find product market fit, or you're over a million, or roughly a million in the low seven figures, and maybe you've hit a plateau. Maybe you grew, but your profit shrunk. Right? There's so many different scenarios and different challenges that people in this industry face, and my role here is to help you understand why they're happening and then understand what levers you need to pull to fix them. Right. And so that's basically what this podcast is about. But before we get into kind of the specifics of everything, I want to just quickly go through my story so you understand that I actually have done this before. I actually understand the challenge that you're going through. And I actually have the credibility and the background and the experience to help you through all this. All right. So again, my name is Jeremy Reeves. I started off as an entrepreneur in, I think it was 2008. It was the summer in between my junior and senior year of college. And I remember I was at my parent, I was still living with my parents at that time, and they got a direct mail letter that was addressed to me. And I opened it up and it said, there's a headline at the top that said, "Can you write a simple letter like this?" And that was basically a direct mail letter for a copywriting course. Long story short, I ended up saying, yes, I could do that. Had no business experience whatsoever before this. I was actually going to school to be an elementary school teacher and then changed my major and was going to go for psychology because I love understanding how the human mind works. But I had absolutely no entrepreneurial experience whatsoever. So completely changed my trajectory of life, became a copywriter, and I still write copy to this day for myself and for clients. But I did that kind of exclusively. I was a direct response sales letter or sales copywriter up until about 2017, and I was a sales funnel specialist. I built all sorts of different sales funnels in different industries. I've written copy for pretty much any industry you could shake a stick at. Most of it was in the physical product space, but I also had clients in services and software and information products and coaches and all sorts of stuff, right? And in 2017, until that point, I had a really successful copywriting agency, was making a ton of money, having the time of my life. And I got a weird email from one of my friends, and he said, "Hey, man, I have a friend who really needs you, and this is going to be a job. So I know that you're going to be resistant to that because he knows how fiercely independent I am." And he said, I wanted to tell you, like, don't disregard this. This is a really unique opportunity for both you and him. And I want you to talk to him. Like, just give him a half hour of your time, talk to him. I promise you it's gonna be worth it. So I was like, I was very resistant, right? I almost just, told him to go screw himself. And, I mean, I wouldn't actually say that to a friend, but I almost told him to go, like, basically that I wasn't interested. But something in my brain, there's something in my gut that said, do this. So I was like, all right, get on the phone with him. Long story short, that 30-minute phone call turned into a 3-hour phone call. And then coincided with me meeting him in San Diego at a TNC Traffic Conversion Summit event. And I think this was in 2000, it might be 2016, 17. I think it was 17. I think it was like February of 2017, something like that. And, we talked all that time. And the strange part about this is that about a year prior to that, I kind of got in this space that I was really good at selling things. I was really, really good at writing sales copy, getting the customers, right? Getting that initial first transaction. And I became so good at it at that point that it kind of got boring for me. And I like variety. I like to challenge and push myself and grow and try to solve challenges that have never been solved before. Like, that's what lights me up at the end of the day. And so I was like, you know what? I want to try something different and I want to go deeper. right? I want to go beyond just getting customers, that customer acquisition, and learn how business is operated and how business creates profit and keeps profit and how to do cash flow management and manage people and hire people and fire people and all the operations and the finances and all this stuff. I just wanted to understand how business worked, right, at a high level. So went to work for him, and true to his word, I got hired as a marketing director was the title, but I told him, look, I understand my title is a marketing director, but I just want you to know that I don't just want to do marketing, right? I want to understand how this business operates. I want to be involved in the behind the scenes decisions. I want to be a part of those decisions. I want to bring things to you and make decisions with you, right? And so it was probably much more of a partnership than it was an employee relationship. In fact, I'm still very, very good friends with him to this day. In fact, I was just talking to him the other day. And while I was there, up until that point, let me just backtrack just a second. Up until that point, I had done, I don't know, probably somewhere in the range of, I don't know, 75 million bucks or something like that, 50 million to 75 million with my clients before that. Then I joined him and did two really big things. Well, I guess three really big things while I was with him. There were dozens and dozens and dozens, but I can't really go through them all. But three really big things were, number one, when I first joined that company, it was an information product business. It actually had some physical components, like it was we were actually shipping DVDs, believe it or not. And so I still got some kind of knowledge and background in physical products with a DVD, right? But while I was there, we launched a supplement, and it was a cacao powder, right? And we launched that, and in the first year, did $8 million in the like cash collected in the first year, not $8 million run rate or anything like that, but like launched it, and within the first 12 months made about, it was somewhere in the range of $8 million. I think it was like just short, like 7.9 or something like that. And also did, we took one sale, or one product was doing about 15 sales a day when I first started working on it, and rejiggered a couple things and rewrote the sales page and the upsell, that sort of thing. And just between those two changes, redid all the economics, the acquisition economics for that offer, and took it to 450 sales a day. So from 15 to 450 sales. And then another one was, and this is again for the supplement, was when they would do promos, they were generally generating somewhere in the range of 10, 30 grand, something like that, in that range, depending on the promotion. And I came up with one that it was just under $150,000 by around lunchtime. And the only reason that it stopped was because we had sold out on the website, and then actually changed the call to action button from the website to Amazon, and then sold out on Amazon as well. And that's the only reason it even stopped at that. We had a whole like week-long promotion for that offer, and we actually stopped it because we had no more products left. So quite the win. And it taught me a lot about how to do promotions properly in a physical products business, and actually keep a lot of the money, and like what generates desire in promotions. And it's one of my favorite things I love to do now with people. And so anyway, was with them for 2 years, learned so much, so much. It was an 8-figure business with a bunch of employees. I can't remember, probably 20 some, 30 some, maybe, no, maybe around 40 employees, something like that. And learned so much from them. So grateful for being part of that, journey with them along those 2 years. And then again, my intuition struck. I'm a very, very spiritual guy, so I follow my intuition, my gut. And something, the universe came down and slapped me across the face and basically said, "Hey, Jeremy, like this is done. It's time to move on to your next thing." So I did, and I left a very, very, very high paying job with them to start my own company, which turned out to be a supplement company called Biome. And we launched that in the very beginning of December of 2019. And the first couple months, like December, January, February, we did a slow launch, right? As you typically do with the physical products businesses, because you're trying to work out the kinks with fulfillment, and with, figuring out what your margins are, and trying to get product market fit and all the fun things, right, that go with when you first start. And once we kind of got a little traction, we got it up to about 30 grand a month within those first 3 months, and then launched our second product, and which was for constipation. And when we did that, everything took off. And we took that business from doing $30,000 in, it was February, March. And the next 3 months, It took us only 3 more months to go from 30,000 a month to $1 million a month. And considering that you probably have a physical products business as you're listening to this, your butt cheeks may have just clenched just a little bit hearing someone going from 30,000 to $1 million a month, because you understand the challenges that I probably and absolutely did go through during that time. Because when you scale that fast, it is absurd, for lack of a better word. I still remember I would spend the first 10 hours of every day trying to just keep all the wheels on, and then I would eat, and then I didn't even have, or no, at that point it was me, one affiliate manager, and one customer service rep doing $1 million a month in physical products. So just imagine that. It was very, very equal parts, just absolute chaos and insanity and awesomeness, right? And one of the most fun parts of my life, honestly. I learned so much. I lost so much money in mistakes, because it was just something that I had never I had done that. Actually, I've done, I think, four different offers that have done over 10 figures with clients, but that was the first time that I actually did it for myself, right? And so it was chaotic, but it was awesome, and I would love to do it again, honestly. And so anyway, so sold that business in July of 2025, and then another universe hand came down, smacked me across the face again, and it said, "Okay, Jeremy, now we're going to write a book." And so I wrote a book called The Scalable Profit Model, which kind of took all of the lessons that I've learned over my career since roughly 2008, and at this point in 2026, somewhere in the range of about $200 million in total, like in generated sales for myself and clients. And I wrote a book explaining how to do all that, which is very, very, very applicable for anybody in the physical product space, because it shows you how to build a scalable profit model. I mean, it's kind of in the title, right? Most people know how to generate revenue, but they don't actually know how to take that revenue and turn it into profit, turn it into positive cash flow, right? There's a very big skill gap that a lot of people just don't have, and that's why that's why I wrote the book. It's why I'm creating this podcast, right? To teach everyone in this industry how to do this profitably and properly, because it's just so important. And with that book, launched my business, which is called Scale Advisors. And as you can imagine, we work with physical products brands, typically doing somewhere in the range of about $1 to $20 million, and show them how to do everything that I've been talking about, how to scale the business, but do it in a way that gives them more profit, more cash, and less stress, right? And that is our unique differentiator. There are very few, if any, none that I know about as of right now. We'll see what copycats come out of this. But as of right now, as far as I'm aware, I'm the only person in this space that can connect the marketing side of things with the operational side of things with the financial side of things, right? There's no one that's looking at it as a one holistic unit. And that's what it is. Because if you're working with agencies on the marketing side, they're looking at things from the marketing lens, generally a revenue lens, right? They're not looking at your unit economics. They're not looking at like your return on profit, right? They're looking only at the top vanity type metrics, but they're not looking at what you actually keep, right? How many people have actually asked you how much cash have you distributed to yourself in the last 12 months, right? Probably zero, because that's not what their focus is. Their focus is on revenue, so they look good, right? It's not focused on what you keep as the owner. And that is what I'm focused on, right? So yeah, so here I am. Here's the podcast. So let's get into what this podcast is going to cover, why it's unique, who it's for, that sort of thing, right? So as you can imagine, this podcast it's for anybody who's an entrepreneur, but I'm going to kind of customize it specifically to physical product brands, right? And the fact is, like if you look at most of the advice you're getting right now, it's focusing on individual aspects of running a physical products brand. So again, like you might be getting information from people that are on the marketing side. There's other people that are looking from the operational lens. There's other people who are looking from the financial lens, right? But there's no one out there who's looking at all of them simultaneously and saying, "Hey, look, yes, we can increase revenue, but here's the deal. Your contribution margin on this product, this product, this product means that if you get more volume, you're actually going to lose money on those things, right? There's no one that's looking at it and saying, hey, if we got more customers over here, that's going to break here in operations. There's no one looking at it and saying, hey, if we get more customers, you're going to like actually keep more cash flow, or like how does doubling the amount of customers over here affect our cash flow or our margins or whatever it is, right? There's nobody looking at everything as one unit, right? And that's where I come in. And the way that I do that is I have 5 levers that create profit in a business, right? If you take all of the things that you can be doing in business, right? There's a bazillion things, right? So just imagine that you're looking down at a chessboard, and on that chessboard, every single little slot is filled, right? There are so many different things that you can be doing in your business. And the reality is, you probably are doing all of the things, right? You're wearing all of the hats, right? If you're like most of my clients, most of the people that I've worked with over the years, you're probably wearing 1,000 different hats, to the point where like if someone just comes and pokes one of them, the whole system is going to crash down. It's probably why, a lot of you probably can't go on vacation without freaking out, thinking that things are going to break, and they may very well break. It depends on how things are set up, right? A lot of that also is just a mentality thing, which we'll get into the mindset as we go throughout the podcast. But there's a way to be able to get more customers without operations breaking and without the cash flow breaking, right? And the way that we do that is by systematically looking at the 5 levers that create profit in a business and aligning them so that you can grow. All right, I'm going to come back to the tagline again. You can scale with more profit, more cash, less stress, right? And so how do we do that? What are the 5 levers? Lever number 1 is contribution margin. And if you don't know this number and you have a physical products brand, you are losing so much money. Period. Just end stop. You are losing a ton of money if you don't know these numbers, right? So contribution margin is just simply, if you sell a product for $100, how much of that do you keep, right? And it's essentially just your variable cost, right? So for every $100 package that goes out, you have all your fulfillment fees, you have your product costs, you have refunds, you have, maybe depending on what you sell, maybe you have like sales commissions or something like that, right? You have merchant fees, right? All of these things that come out, and with each unit that you sell, how much of that do you keep, right? So that's contribution margin. Second lever is acquisition economics. So you can look at that in terms of 2 lenses. One is, how efficiently are you generating customers? So like your conversion rate, right? And then the second side of that is, how much are you keeping, making and keeping per transaction with that customer? So that's more of like the average order value side of things, right? So there's like the conversions and then the economics that kind of makes up acquisition economics. And then the third one is lifetime value. So once you get that customer, what's your repeat purchase rate? Do you have subscriptions, right? Like, how much money, and specifically how much money in contribution margin dollars, are you keeping over what time frame? Okay. And, in this industry, a big kind of benchmark is like a 3-to-1 LTV to CAC ratio. I will talk about that in future episodes. I actually think that's too low. And there's a lot of things that you can do with lifetime value, right? And it's just about, how do we get more money from each customer faster? Okay. And that's the focus on lifetime value. The fourth one is operational efficiency. So kind of like acquisition economics, operational efficiency can also kind of be broken down into 2 ways. The way that I measure it is really through what's called operating leverage, which essentially means that if you added an extra $1 million in top line revenue, how much do your fixed costs increase, right? So if you have one business where they add $1 million and they add $500,000 in fixed overhead, right, and operating expenses, so like payroll and things like that, you have 500,000 left, right? Well, if you have a second business that is more efficient in their operations and they don't have to add as much overhead, let's just say that they add 250,000 instead of 500. Well, that's an extra $250,000 in profit, right? Then versus the first one. So that's what operational efficiency is. And then the kind of second part of that is, yes, you get that profit increase, but you also get the stress reduction. And that is, you can't really put a dollar on that. That's kind of the intangibles of all this, but oh my God, is it important, right? And as someone who's in this industry, I'm sure that you know that, right? So if you resonated with the fact that, like, if you go on a vacation, like that you'd freak out, like just imagine that you go away from your business for 10 days with absolutely no communication on your team. And my question to you is, can you do that? Right? I guess there's two questions. Number one, is your business even able to do that? That's the first one. And then number two, are you mentally capable of doing that? And that's a totally different question. That just, kind of shows you the trust you have in your team and your processes, right? And again, we'll cover all this throughout the podcast. I'm just doing a super quick deep dive or overview in all these levers today. So that's operational efficiency, super, super, super important and highly, highly, highly overlooked. And then the final one is capital return velocity. And so in this space, most people are familiar with your cash conversion cycle, which is, essentially like how long it takes to go through your inventory, and you look at that in terms of a cash basis, like how long it takes for you to get your cash back in inventory. That's not a good enough metric, honestly. When I was writing the book and I was thinking about this, I was thinking about all of the accounting terms for what's truly important in a business. And cash conversion cycle is important, but it's incomplete. And when I was figuring this out, I realized that there's no existing term for what people in this space need to understand, right? And that's why I came up with capital return velocity, because it basically measures the speed of your capital going out of your pocket and coming back into your pocket, right? On a cash basis. So we all face something that most other industries don't have, and that is inventory, right? So if other businesses, they're looking at ROAS and they're just say they're break even on day one, right, on their acquisition spend, well, that's could be great, could not be great. It depends on the industry and the business and the business model. But in this industry, you might pay for that inventory 90 days before you break even. So you're not break even on day one. When you break even on day one, you're already 90 days in the hole, right? That is a constraint and that is a challenge that other industries just don't face. And it's a really tough one, to fix. But I promise you it is fixable. Okay. When I ran mine, I was, telling you about all my stuff. I was able to find a partner that we went from, I think it was something like paying for our supplements 2 months in advance, right? So 60 days I have to wait before I even get it, and then you have to sell it, and all the, I'm sure you're familiar with all this. We were able to do it on demand, right? And I actually paid for it 15 days after we sold it. So that's a 75-day swing in cash. What do you think that would do for your business, right? And just think about that. Think about, what does 75 days of cash look like for you? Because that goes straight into your bank account as instant working capital, or you can finally distribute cash to yourself, right? Who'd have thought? So that's capital return velocity, right? Because like when we shell out cash for inventory, but then you also have overhead that you're paying every month, right? You have all these things, you have acquisition, you have all these expenses that need cash, right? So when you're putting out that cash, you have to do all of that, and then you have to generate a customer, and then you need enough profit per customer at a certain volume to cover your acquisition costs and all of your overhead. And once all of that happens, you then have cash that you can either reinvest back in the business or keep for yourself, right? That would be like distributable cash, right? And capital return velocity measures that whole cycle. Okay. And it's longer than most people think. And it's why so many people get into cash crises in this industry, especially as there's this weird dynamic of like, when you're trying to scale, you need more cash to be able to buy more inventory to scale, but then you don't have cash, right? Because like by the time you get it back, then you have to put it into more inventory. And it's just this crazy cycle, that people go through. So we'll talk about all that throughout this podcast, but that's what capital return velocity measures. And all four of the other levers already increase that, right? So for example, let's just say contribution margin, right? You increase your contribution margin by just say 10%. Well, you're keeping 10% more profit well, actually, it's a lot higher than that in profit, but more, you're keeping 10% more cash with each individual customer you buy. So look, I have calculators and things that I give you, and we'll walk through, I'll do videos and all sorts of stuff. Again, as we go through this, but like you have to model out what that looks like in your business. So you model out like what is your contribution margin per product and for your overall business, just as a total. And then you can model out like, hey, if I increased our contribution margin by 10%, we did some things. We increased price, we negotiated lower rates, or we optimized our shipping, or whatever it is. There's a bunch of ways to do it. How does that affect how much profit we keep and how much cash we keep, right? And that's the type of stuff that we're going to be looking for, because when you can see how one change affects your overall profit model, that is when things get fun. Okay. And that is what I'm going to show you through this within this podcast. All right. So with that said, I think that's probably, you probably get right what the podcast is about. And if you're listening to this at this point, it's probably cool. This podcast is for me, or hey, no, it's not. And that's fine too. Right. I only want to talk to the people that I can truly help here. So now let's talk about the different types of businesses, different business stages within being a physical products business, right? Because depending on where you are, you're going to have different challenges. All right. So we'll just super quickly break this down. In general, and of course, this is going to vary. These aren't like hard numbers or anything like that. This is obviously going to vary. But in general, roughly, if you're under $1 million, you're just trying to find product market fit. You're trying to find, what is my messaging that I can convert customers at, right? You need like your messaging, which gives you your conversion rates. And then you need to understand your unit economics and your acquisition economics to understand like if you can actually be viable as a company, right? You're pretty much just trying to validate your concept, we'll just say, under $1 million, right? And if you're in that group now, this podcast is going to help you. We won't go as much into all of that, like the messaging. We will at some point, but it's not like the primary focus of this. There are a lot of other people that can help with that, and I certainly will, but that's not going to be like the absolute primary thing that this is focusing on. But what's really important to understand is that if you build the foundation correctly, which is what I'm going to be showing, then it's going to help you get to $1 million faster. But when you get there, you'll be more profitable and have more cash and less stress. I'm going to keep coming back to that a bazillion times, so just get used to it. So that's under $1 million. If you're, let's just say, in the low seven figures, so let's just say like roughly between $1 million to $5-ish million, something like that, then that's where you start hitting that plateau, right? That's where you start going into like all these, you kind of hit it, but you can't spend more to acquire customers, right? But like you can't, there's all these factors that are like limiting you from breaking through that ceiling. A lot of times it's cash flow, right? Or it's customers getting too expensive to acquire, right? Or maybe a combination of both. Or maybe you're hitting operational issues. Maybe your fulfillment partner can only produce a certain amount of units in a given time frame, and they can't, like, that's your constraint, right? There's a lot of different constraints that can cause that ceiling. Again, if you follow these 5 levers and you really dial them in, that's going to help you break through that ceiling. All right. And then if you go above 5 million into like the 5 to 10 million range, that's where you're starting to get into, again, generally, you're starting to get into more operational systems type issues. All right. And that's where we're going to focus more on the cash side, right? I mean, cash, I feel like kind of in a physical products business, cash kind of, it really affects everything, right? It kind of, regardless of where you're at, it's always going to be an issue, and it's always going to be something to really monitor closely. So we'll spend a lot of time there. But operationally is a lot of times where all these things break, right? It's going to be you're the bottleneck is really going to be the limiter in this stage, because a lot of people get to a certain point, but that's like they hit again this ceiling where they can't grow because they are the bottleneck, right? And as we go through all the operational efficiency, topics, will help you to unblock yourself and unconstrain yourself from your own business, which is kind of a weird thing if you think about it, that it's like you got the business to a certain point, but then you're also the reason that it can't grow faster, right? It's kind of this weird conundrum, but it happens in almost every business on earth, right? So if you're in that stage, Don't feel bad about it. It is so common, so normal, right? Don't feel bad about it. There are solutions to it. Again, I can help you with that and I will help you with that. So hopefully, if you're in that stage, then that gives you a little bit of inspiration and hope, right? So yeah, that's basically what the podcast is about. I would say in terms of like how I'm going to do this, it's going to be kind of a mix between me, like these monologues like this, me just staring into this camera in front of me and just awkwardly looking into this blank screen and pretending that I'm looking at a person like a crazy person, right? And those like monologues mixed with guest interviews, and I think I'm going to break them up. We'll do some hot seats, we'll do some business teardowns, we'll bring on successful physical product business owners, whether they have one now or maybe they sold one. They can tell us their story, tell us what worked, what didn't work, some of the things to avoid, some of the things to do, all that kind of fun stuff. So pretty much I'm gonna go based on your feedback. If you have any feedback on the podcast, you can always hit us up at help@scaleadvisors.com. I would love to hear what you think about the podcast, and if you have any like guests that you want to have on here, any topics that you want me to cover, anything like that, please email us. Let me know. Again, help@scaleadvisors.com. Otherwise, I hope you have fun going along for the ride on this podcast. If you're on YouTube, I'll be putting these videos on YouTube. If you're a podcast listener, like, literally listening to a podcast on audio, it's going to be generally the same thing that's on YouTube. I'll also be on LinkedIn, and we'll figure out what other platforms, probably Twitter or X, whatever, but I refuse to call it X. I like Twitter better because that's what I used for like a decade or 15 years probably before X. So anyway, that's the show. I hope it sounds awesome to you. I promise it's going to be very, very, very valuable and very profitable for you to do. So with that said, if you already are getting value from this and you feel like sharing the podcast, that is the absolute best compliment you can ever give to me, is to tell people about it. Make sure you're subscribing. Make sure you're liking. If this is on video on YouTube, subscribe and like. If it's on a podcast, share and subscribe. Whatever you're on, just do me a favor. If you enjoy the content, that is the best thing that you can do for me. And if you're interested in becoming a client, just go to scaleadvisors.com. There's various options there for you. If you're interested in picking up the book, you can get that at scaleadvisors.com/book, right? Pretty complicated, I know. That the book is also on the homepage of the website. So if you just go to scaleadvisors.com, there's pretty much everything you need. And then the last thing that I would say is get on my email list. Email is my favorite thing, and it's the thing that I really do the best, honestly. I am much better in email than I am on video or talking out loud. I was a writer for pretty much my entire adult life. Literally been writing copy longer than I've been alive, which is, roughly as long as I've been alive. I'm 40 now, so roughly, give or take a year or two. So about half my life I've been writing sales copy, which is kind of crazy to think about. But yeah, get on there. There's free, there's free stuff on you that will help you. I'm actually building them out right now as of the time that I'm recording this podcast, so I can't tell you exactly what they are, but go on the website. There's free, really cool stuff that I'm going to be building for free for people in the physical product space. So again, if you're listening to this, by the time you hear this, they're probably going to be built on there already, right? So go on there and see what's there for you. Otherwise, I really hope you enjoy this podcast. I'm going to have a lot of fun making it for you. I hope you have a lot of fun listening to it, and I hope it gives you a lot of insights as I'm going to. That's why I'm building the podcast, to help everyone in this space. So I hope you value it. And until next time, my name is Jeremy Reeves, and I'll see you then.